Credit cards are losing value, not because of one big change, but because of dozens of smaller ones that are all happening at the same time. Transfer partners are getting worse, award seats are being impossible to find, and the gap between the value that you're promised versus the value you actually get is only getting wider, all on top of even bigger trends that you need to know about. So in this video, we're going over everything that's going on, what it means for you and your rewards, and how to stay ahead of the curve so you keep getting the maximum value that you deserve. Let's get right into it because transferring points to partners has been kind of the foundation of this entire space. It's where you turn 60,000 points to thousands of dollars worth of travel value. And over the last year, this is where some of the biggest hits have landed. Emirates really sets the tone here. Around mid-2025, pretty much every major issuer from Chase to Amex, Citi, and Capital One paused their transfers to Emirates. This was unpaused soon after, but one by one, devaluations happened, with Citi and American Express dropping from a 1-to-1 ratio to 5-to-4, Capital One dropping to 4-to-3, and Chase straight up just dropping Emirates as a partner, all on top of Emirates gating the first class to their elite members. Only Bilt has maintained their 1-to-1 transfer ratio, which is quite notable. And it doesn't just stop there because now Amex is about to devalue transfers to Cathay Pacific Asia miles to a 5-to-4 ratio as well. So that business class redemption to Hong Kong that would have cost 88,000 Amex points, well, now that's 110,000 Amex points instead for the same flight. Now that's on top of Asia miles already bumping up the miles required not too long ago, which is yet another worrying trend, like Lufthansa moving to dynamic pricing, which is like a black box that they can adjust up and down, though typically ends up in a worse situation for those that like to maximize value from your points. Or Turkish miles, basically axing all the sweet spots across North America, although availability for those had been quite iffy already. The real point here isn't that it's one airline being greedy, it's an unfortunate growing pattern. Airlines are demanding more from banks for their partnerships, and in turn, these banks are passing that cost to you through worst ratios, or in Chase's case, just dropping that partner. Those reliable sweet spots are just drifting away. That said, remember, typically there are a few different ways to book the same type of flights. Like with Turkish miles axing those sweet spots to Hawaii, well, now you can consider Atmos points and also have access to those Hawaiian routes too. I just really hope that this isn't the end to these 1-to-1 transfer rates, but the trend is pretty worrying. It's another reason not to hoard all your points because you'll never know when the value will just tank. And this is just the transferring side. Even if the points and miles required is reasonable, actually finding availability for these tickets has gotten harder as well. Arguably the more frustrating part of an already confusing puzzle. United is probably one of the worst examples. In the back half of 2025, they gated pretty much all of their Polaris business class award availability behind either having elite status with United or a co-branded card with an annual fee. A couple years ago, I actually flew them coming back from Asia, redeeming through Aeroplans, so it's unfortunate to see a pretty decent avenue of redemptions just going away. Then there's Flying Blue, raising prices in early 2025, and then later gating a lot of their Saver Award availability to their Platinum and Ultimate level members. Now, I do still see Saver rates here and there to Asia or Europe for as low as 60,000 miles, but not nearly as much as before. For example, I've used this program a couple of times, booking 3 to 4 seats per flight over to Asia for 60,000 miles, but as I'm looking now for an upcoming flight, it has been getting a lot harder, so maybe this is why. I don't have Platinum status, but according to Award Wallet, the difference between having it and not is pretty staggering. And then there's Aeroplan, a highly used partner of mine, growing their list of partners that are moving to dynamic pricing, like United, Emirates, and Etihad. If you have travel plans in mind already, try and book them sooner than later, because the trend of these sweet spots being harder and harder to find is only going to get worse. The opportunities are still out there, but they'll take more effort and time. Time that most people probably won't have to dedicate to this hobby. You have to put in the hard work or learn more unique ways of finding these sweet spots to then come out ahead. Which leads us to another issue. Most of you probably know that the easiest way to get a lot of high value points in the shortest amount of time is to hit minimum spends and achieve welcome bonuses. Well, those are getting worse too. Take the Amex Platinum card, my most valuable card of all time. They just bumped up the minimum spend from $8,000 up to $12,000 in the first 6 months. That's a 50% increase. I have a friend that actually just applied for this card and now has to hit that higher spend, unfortunately. On the bright side though, they were able to get that maximum 175,000 point welcome bonus. And I say maximum because that bonus is now an up to language, with plenty of people only seeing 50 to 80,000 points sometimes. It's now another black box with less transparency. Having to hit a higher minimum spend for potentially lower amount of rewards, that's not a good trend. The silver lining though is that at least you'll know what bonus you'll get before you actually apply for the card, so you can always back out and maybe wait it out for another offer if you choose so. Chase also kind of joined the lack of transparency cat recently as well, where they said you would only qualify for a Sapphire bonus once every 48 months, and then moving to a once per lifetime rule similar to American Express's, although later they stepped back a little bit, saying that you will qualify for each of the Sapphire cards instead. The same tightening of welcome bonuses is happening to Capital One's Venture family of cards too, where if you've had the Venture X, you won't qualify for the Venture or the Venture One. The same thing with having the Venture card and not qualifying for the Venture One. So moving upwards is still okay, so if you want to maximize the total number of points earned, you'll want to go in that order. This is similar to going for the Amex Gold card first before the Amex Platinum card, because you won't qualify in reverse. More and more of these easier ways to get a lot of value are being closed off, from great welcome bonuses to even the more unique opportunities, like the Chase Inc. family of business cards, getting a major rework in their welcome bonus language and restricting them even more, or even referrals being harder to earn points from. 2025 was the biggest refresh cycle in years. The new Amex Platinum card, the Sapphire Reserve, Built 2.0, City Strata Elite. But with most of these major issuers already updating their lineups, you also shouldn't expect much change when it comes to this year, which also means fewer new opportunities for more value. Unless, of course, players like Wells Fargo decides to release their higher end card this year, or maybe the rumored Chase Hyatt premium card. But speaking of premium cards, historically, they would have more easily been worth it given a few credits you have to use during the year to offset the fee. The Venture X is the classic example. Yes, it has a $395 in annual fees, but you have that $300 travel credit through their portal, which is pretty easy to get solid value from, and the 10,000 anniversary miles. But that's the exception. Most of the other premium cards are going the opposite direction. And although they're claiming to offer even more value, that value is spread across many more credits, and those credits are spread either per half, per quarter, or even per month, making it a lot harder to get full value from. The Amex Platinum now has 12 different credits across quarterly, every half, or every month, you have to remember. Yes, they can market having over $3,500 in value on a card that just costs $895, but actually using all of those credits to a big degree will require a lot of tracking, enrollment, and activations. And honestly, it's starting to feel like a part-time job, especially for the more casual cardholders. If you do put in the work or it fits your lifestyle, yes, you can be getting much more in value, way more than the $200 increase to the annual fee. But I would say probably for most people, that won't be the case. Then there's the other popular premium card, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, with its refresh up to $795 in annual fees and its version of a bunch of credits. Though in my opinion, it wasn't as great as the Amex Platinum card, and they got rid of a really popular benefit, which was that guaranteed 1.5 cents per point value on its points when booking through the Chase travel portal. I kind of think of it as these issuers are narrowing their target audience of who can potentially get this higher value, knowing that most of them won't maximize it, or won't maximize it that much more while collecting that guaranteed increase in annual fees. On the bright side, this does leave a small gap in the market, which cards like the City Strata Elite tried to fill with a relatively lower annual fee at $595 and a simpler lineup of credits along with much higher multipliers in pretty common categories. The only downside is these benefits usually won't be enough to cover that full annual fee, and their points are typically not at the level of Chase or Amex, but they are improving it fast, adding partners like American Airlines, or that hidden hotel booking sweet spot that's not Hyatt that you can learn more about here. So there are options out there and a space that hopefully newcomers like maybe Wells Fargo will fill. And then there's the lounge situation. Although a lot of these issuers are greatly expanding their own network of lounges, following the path of American Express and Centurion lounges they paved years ago, they're also restricting access to them more and more. Like with the Capital One Venture X, restricting guest access from their Priority Pass benefit and their own lounges to just the main cardholder, unless you spend over $75,000 in the calendar year, else your guests will have to pay. That second part is a similar pattern to the Amex Platinum card and their Centurion lounge access. But now Amex is taking it a step further with an upcoming rule that says that your guests have to be flying the same flight as you, and for layover connections, you can only access up to 5 hours before your next flight. The first part, I don't know how often that comes up, but the layover one could impact a lot of people who have oddly timed connections or just have to transfer through a lot of airports to get where they need to be. These type of changes really devalue cards like the Venture X, because I know a bunch of people who have really called out wanting this card purely because it was a lower priced way to get access into a lot of lounge perks. And it'll also hurt people who are traveling in groups a lot or have family. But a small tip for that is if you do have multiple cards with Priority Pass access, at least in my experience, over 80% of the lounges I've been to have allowed me to use the passes on both cards to bring in more than 2 guests. So your mileage may vary. Now, stepping back a bit, this trend of unlocking more benefits after hitting a certain high threshold of spend is also a worrying one. Not only gating out perks that you used to have, like guest access for lounges, but gating out new perks like with the refresh of the Sapphire Reserve, unlocking higher IHG status, as well as hundreds of dollars in additional perks. It's almost like a trial run to see how many people actually do it to balance out the additional perks they're offering. The same goes for welcome bonuses that are unlocked in 2 different tranches, like the Chase Hyatt card, unlocking after $5,000 of spend in the first 3 months, and then $15,000 of spend in the first 6 months. That said, here's the thing that really connects all of this together. In a world where these companies are pushing for more and more profit, they have to find that profit somewhere. And unfortunately, though not surprisingly, they earn more when they lock their cardholders within their own ecosystem. Whether that's spending more with them, like the Built 2.0, where you have to spend like 75% of your rent in order to fully unlock the points you earn from that, giving you more credits to justify a higher annual fee, knowing most people won't use them. The same goes for the hotel credits like on the Sapphire Preferred or the Strata Premier cards, or like the Amex Platinum card, where they probably get a kickback for having credits marketing things like Lululemon, or also benefiting when you redeem your rewards you earn from them with them as well. It's why issuers like Chase are marketing so heavily that you can earn up to 2 cents per point when using your rewards to book flights and hotels through their portal. Yes, it's technically higher than the guaranteed 1.5 cents per point back in the old days, but according to the study by NerdWallet, fewer than 10% of all flights qualified and fewer than 3% of flights were actually in economy. And it's not an even distribution across airlines. So there's some bias there too. The same type of reason is why nowadays so many cards are upping the points you earn when spending within their own ecosystem. Take the Sapphire Reserve, the Capital One Venture X, or now even the City Strata Elite with 12 times points. Again, there will be people that benefit more from these changes, but likely a smaller audience than before. So a lot of changes that are mostly negative or maybe neutral at best. But I want to be clear, I'm not saying that cards, benefits, and points aren't worth it anymore. They absolutely still are. I'm one of those people who can still get that outsized value from my cards, whether it's naturally using a lot of the credits to help justify the annual fees, or almost exclusively redeeming through transfer partners for experiences like these and these. It is getting harder to do, but the fundamentals haven't changed. It's just that the more set it and forget it way of getting value is ending. Like the easy wins, the big bonuses, or those generous lounge policies. Like most people did say that the Venture X was too good to be true, and it would probably be devalued at some point. So the way I'm thinking about these things now is pretty simple. For one, use your points. Seriously, if you're sitting on a big balance of points waiting for that perfect redemption, time is working against you. Transfer partners are getting worse, seats are getting harder to find, so if something works for you, don't hold out on perfect. It might be better to just lock that in now. Then on the credit side, don't force it. If you're rearranging your whole life just to use that $10 a month in credits, that's not winning, that's just work. Figure out which credits naturally fit how you spend and live, and let the rest go, even if it means switching up a lot of your setup. The goal here is to come out way ahead without it feeling like a chore. And the portal thing, look, sometimes yes, booking through the portal can have its value, especially with those elevated earning rates, sometimes maybe even outweighing lower price tickets elsewhere, or like the Amex International Airlines program where the value is there, but just know when it makes sense. And then probably the most important, diversify. Going all in with a partner like Chase might have made more sense when the value was more consistent. Now, having options across ecosystems gives you that flexibility when one of them changes that doesn't work in your favor, or to take advantage of different issuers' transfer bonuses. That said, if you want to know how to actually find and book these sweet spots while they still exist, check out my step-by-step breakdown here. Safe travels, and I'll see you over there.